welcome to World Today. Last year, we saw a bitter spat between President Donald Trump and young climate activist Greta Thunberg. This year, interestingly, President Trump has been impeached for the second time and Greta Thunberg is on the stamp of Sweden. On the show, we'll also be discussing news from the Korean Peninsula as also the situation of the Hazaras in Pakistan. It was a historic day in Donald Trump's presidency when the Democrats and the Republicans sparred in the House of Representatives to decide whether to impeach the president for an unprecedented second time. The House voted 232 to 197 in favor of the impeachment motion, given the Democrats are in majority in the lower chamber. But interestingly, 10 Republicans broke ranks from their party and voted for the article of impeachment. But could this mean trouble for President Trump? Could he really be removed from office? Here are his options.
The president must be impeached, and I believe the president must be convicted by the Senate, a constitutional remedy that will ensure that the Republic will be safe from this man who was so resolutely determined to tear down the things that we hold dear and that hold us together.
With that, 45th US President Donald Trump made history of being impeached twice. The second impeachment was triggered after the storming of the Capitol Hill on 6th of January by hundreds of the president's armed supporters, resulting in the death of 5 people and scores of injuries. They were protesting the certification process of Democrat President-elect Joe Biden's victory by the Congress. The sitting president is accused of a single charge of inciting insurrection against the United States government. He first instigated the mob and then criticized them for violence.
The Democrats are hopeless. They're never voting for anything. Not even one vote. But we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country.
According to the article of impeachment, President Trump repeatedly issued false statements asserting that the presidential election results were fraudulent and should not be accepted. The Capitol Hill siege has shattered many in the Republican Party as well, and that's the reason why 10 of them voted in favor of the current impeachment. American presidents Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton were the other 2 presidents who have been impeached in the past, but there have been no convictions.
Now that the House of Representatives has impeached Donald Trump, the next step is for it to be sent to the upper house, the Senate, for a trial and conviction to take place. But there are only a few days left for Mr. Donald Trump to leave the White House. So the plan is for it to be sent to the Senate after the new president, Joe Biden, takes over. However, Mr. Biden's first priority will be to confirm his cabinet and to implement his initial legislative agenda. So it might be a few weeks or maybe a couple of months before the Senate takes it up.
Majority Leader.
The Senate, which is the upper chamber of the legislature, will have to hold a trial now. If convicted, Donald Trump could be barred from running office ever again. A 2/3 majority is required in the Senate for the conviction to take place. The Senate is now divided 50-50 between the 2 parties, which means that Democrats will need at least 17 Republicans to vote in favor of the article of impeachment.
Who was so resolutely determined.
There are reports that as many as 20 Senate Republicans are open to voting against Donald Trump. Either way, whatever the outcome of the conviction is, Donald Trump signed off his presidency with a new record of being the first president of the United States who has been impeached twice. If he is convicted, then he would be the first president to have been convicted after his term was over.
46th President of the United States of America will be sworn in on the 20th of January. America is preparing for an unprecedented inauguration ceremony, but the biggest challenge is going to be security in wake of the 6th January Capitol siege.
Unprecedented security measures in place in Washington, D.C. The 6th of January 2021 U.S. Capitol siege by the supporters of the sitting President Donald J. Trump raised questions on security preparedness in the capital of the United States. The inauguration of the 46th President of the United States is scheduled to be held on the 20th of January. America is preparing for a smooth transition of power. Multiple threats and backlash received by the president-elect has led to the advancement of the security measures all across Washington. The Washington Monument is temporarily shut down to keep possible rioters out of the state. Just a day after the Capitol siege, crews were also set up to put a 7-foot non-scalable fence at the Capitol. Security is exceptionally tight at the Capitol as the National Guard troops have arrived in D.C. well ahead of the inauguration.
I'd like to maybe teach a poem, but I'm not sure that we can.
On Sunday, I also sent a letter to the Department of Homeland Security's Acting Secretary Chad Wolf regarding inauguration preparation. The District of Columbia is requesting the department extend the National Special Security Event period from Monday, January 11th to Sunday, January the 24th.
10,000 more National Guard troops are going to be in D.C. before the inauguration. Sitting President Donald Trump, after being impeached for the second time, has now called for peace.
There is never a justification for violence. No excuses, no exceptions. America is a nation of laws. Those who engaged in the attacks last week will be brought to justice. Now I am asking everyone who has ever believed in our agenda to be thinking of ways to ease tensions, calm tempers, and help to promote peace in our country. There has been reporting that additional demonstrations are being planned in the coming days, both here in Washington and across the country. I have been briefed by the U.S. Secret Service on the potential threats. Every American deserves to have their voice heard in a respectful and peaceful way.
However, President Trump used his last tweet to announce that he won't be attending the inauguration. He will be the first incumbent president since Andrew Johnson in 1869 to skip his successor's inauguration.
My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. I know you are disappointed, but I also want you to know that our incredible journey is only just beginning.
The vast majority of leading...
The inauguration of Biden administration would be the first virtual swearing-in of a U.S. president.
was a very important step.
Just as 2021 presidential inauguration would be different from what it was 4 years ago, it still bears some similarity. During President Trump's inauguration ball, protests had broken out. Anti-Trump protesters set out rallies against him, and more protests were held in Mexico. This time too, the possibility of protests and violence threatens large in America.
Minorities falling victim to majority population is common knowledge, even if distressingly so. Persecution of the Shiite Hazaras is nothing new in Pakistan or even Afghanistan. They're repeatedly attacked and killed by Sunni extremists, particularly the Taliban in the Shia-Sunni strife of the region, and the state mechanism completely fails them on a repeated basis. In a recent incident, families of 11 coal miners killed by the Islamic State and the entire Hazara community came together, stood up and said no more. But unfortunately, the state's premier showed very little compassion and lacked political prudence, replaying what they've always seen in the past.
आवाम की तरफ से जो आवाम मजबूर है आए दिन ये कत्ल आम के ख़िलाफ़ यहाँ पे इन्होंने रोड ब्लॉक किया हुआ है, वहाँ पे एहतजाज जारी है इनका। लेकिन जो तमाम हमारे हज़ारा कौम की जितने भी जमातें पार्टियाँ हैं उनकी तरफ से अभी तक कोई फ़ाइनल डिसीजन सामने नहीं आया है कि क्या लाया अमल होगा आगे का, क्या उन्होंने भी एहतजाज करना है या नहीं। लेकिन यहाँ पे आम लोग पहुँचे हुए एहतजाज कर रहे हैं।
On 3rd January, armed men took coal miners of Hazara community to nearby mountains, where they opened fire on them. 6 of the miners were reportedly killed on the spot, and 5 were critically wounded, died on the way to the hospital. Prosecuted for more than a century, Hazara community wanted justice.
वो मेरी 6 बहनों का इकलौता भाई था, मेरा एक ही भाई था, 6 बहनें थी हम लोग, एक ही हमारा वारिस था, जो वाहिद हमारा कफील था, वाहिद हमारा कमाने वाला एक ही भाई था मेरा। उसको भी उन्होंने जालिमों ने बड़े बेरहमी से उसको शहीद कर दिया है, उसको ज़िबा किया है भाई। एक ही घर के 5 बंदों को उन्होंने ज़िबा कर दिया है। मेरा भांजा है उसमें, मेरे 2 मामू के बेटे हैं।
Police video of the bodies revealed the miners were blindfolded and had their hands tied behind their backs before being shot by Islamic State activists. The Sunni militant group has reportedly targeted Pakistan's minority Shiites in recent years. The Hazara community on both sides of the border, Pakistan and Afghanistan, has suffered decades of persecution and attacks by violent sectarian groups who consider Shia Muslims to be heretics. According to the National Commission of Human Rights of Pakistan, more than 500 Hazaras have been killed in such attacks since 2012 in Pakistan alone. The Hazara community at the beginning of the new year decided to protest. They refused to bury their dead till Prime Minister Imran Khan himself visited the mourners in Quetta and promised compensation for the dead. But the Prime Minister of Pakistan refused. The Quetta sit-in, which continued through freezing nights, sparked protests in other cities demanding that Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan visit the mourners.
सारे हमारे अपने हैं, लेकिन 5 बंदे हमारे फैमिली के। अल्लाह अल्लाह, हम थक गए और मसीह जनाजे उठाने की हिम्मत भी नहीं है। अल्लाह खुदा रा हमें इंसाफ दे, हमें हमारे साथ इंसाफ करो।
5 days after they were killed on 8th January, the Pakistan Prime Minister labelled the protests as blackmail. It drew widespread criticism by activists, opposition parties and others on social media. He asked them to bury their dead first. Relenting Hazara community did as the Premier demanded. And on 9th January, after the burial, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, reached Quetta, where he met with families of the slain coal miners and prayed at their mausoleum.
हमारी आईएसआई ने मैं उनको दाद देता हूँ कि उन्होंने कम से कम 3 या 4 बड़े प्लॉट्स जिसके अंदर ये कत्ल करने लगे थे शिया या सुन्नी उलमा को, तो उन्होंने उसको भी पहले से ही प्रीएम्प्ट किया, यानी इनको पकड़ा लोगों को जो करने लगे थे। तो ये जो हुआ है, मेरे ज़हन में कोई शक नहीं है कि ये एक बड़ी गेम का हिस्सा था। इसमें मुझे पूरी तरह जब ये हुआ यकीन था कि ये वही जो एक पूरी कड़ी है मुल्क में इंतशार फैलाने की, उसका ये हिस्सा है।
Tens of thousands attended the funeral of the slain miners in the cemetery of Quetta. More than 500 other Hazaras killed in different attacks in past decade are also buried in this very same cemetery.
Welcome back to World Today. Before we go ahead and talk about the North Korean leader and the tensions brewing in the Korean peninsula, let's take a look at other stories doing the rounds from across the world.
More than 30 people died and hundreds were injured after an earthquake of 6.2 magnitude struck central Sulawesi in Indonesia early on Friday. In addition to the confirmed fatalities, there were also tens of thousands of people displaced as a result of the destruction. There are reports of many people being trapped in the rubble of collapsed homes and buildings. Authorities are still collecting information about the full scale of casualties and damage in the affected areas. Indonesia is also searching for wreckage and victims from an Indonesian plane that crashed last weekend in the Java Sea. Ugandans casted their votes in a presidential election tainted by widespread violence on 14th January. Media reports suggested that the security forces tried to stop supporters of leading opposition challenger Bobi Wine from monitoring polling stations. While thousands lined up to cast their vote to select a new president, there was little social distancing and voting officers were having to encourage people to wear their masks. Longtime Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, after casting his ballot, was asked if he would accept the election's outcome, and he said, of course, but quickly added, if there were no mistakes. In Kampala, vote counting was underway and results are expected within 48 hours of polls closing. French wine are headed back to Earth after a year aboard the International Space Station. SpaceX's Dragon cargo capsule undocked on 12th January with 12 bottles of Bordeaux wine and hundreds of snippets of Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon grape wines.
2020 was a year full of speculations and rumors about Kim Jong-un, who kept a low profile and kept away from public eye. At the beginning of 2021, the North Korean leader came out and held a rare congress which riled the world because he declared enhancing of nuclear capabilities of North Korea.
Ended on 13th January with an orchestral rendition of a classic left-wing anthem, The International. This Congress was the first since 2016 and just the second since 1980. As a closing note, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un promised an all-out effort to bolster his country's nuclear deterrent. North Korean state television showed Kim wearing horn-rimmed glasses and a black mouse suit, delivering the speech to thousands of party elites, who responded with thunderous applause. The North Korean economy has suffered severely due to US sanctions. A week before the new president of the United States takes oath, North Korea's declared intention to expand its nuclear arsenal and develop more sophisticated weapons system translates into a pressure tactic on the incoming administration. President-elect Joe Biden has earlier called Kim Jong-un a thug and has criticized his summits with President Donald Trump. On the sixth day of the Congress, Kim Jong-un was given a new title, General Secretary of the ruling Workers' Party. The title was formerly held by his father and grandfather.
당제 8차대에서 경의하는 김정은 동지를 조선노동당 총비서로 높이 추대하였다는 소식을 듣고 흥분된 심정을 금할 수 없었습니다. 저는 경의하는 김정은 동지를 총비서로 높이 모신 궁지와 자부심을 가슴 간직하고 당제 8차대의 결정관 처리한 투쟁에서 자신의 책임과 판본을 다해 나가겠습니다.
Faced with the stiffest challenge in his 9-year rule, the title of General Secretary of the ruling party is a symbolic move aimed at bolstering his authority amid growing economic challenges. Pandemic-related border closures, the floods and typhoons that wiped out summer crops have further shocked the North Korean economy, already devastated by mismanagement and US-led sanctions over its nuclear weapons program. Kim Jong-un admitted that his economic development plans have failed in his inaugural speech on the first day of the party congress.
그러나 국가 경제 발전 5개년 전략 수행 기간이 지난해까지 끝났지만 내세웠던 목표는 거의 모든 부문에서 엄청나게 미달하였습니다. 사회주의 건설에서 부단한 새로운 승리를 쟁취하기 위해 투쟁하는 우리의 노력과 전지를 방해하고 저해하는 갖가지 도전은 외부에도 내부에도 의연히 존재하고 있습니다. 현존하는 첩첩난관을 가장 확실하게 가장 빨리 돌파하는 묘수는 바로 우리 자체의 힘, 주체적 영역을 백방으로 강화하는 데 있습니다.
Kim Jong-un also called for reasserting greater state control over the economy, boosting agricultural production and prioritizing the development of chemicals and metal industries in the 5-year plan.
It's time to wrap up this edition of World Today, but before we go, we'll leave you with images of postal stamps unveiled by Sweden's postal company PostNord. The series focusing on the environment features Swedish teenage environmental activist Greta Thunberg. Thunberg, in her trademark yellow raincoat with her braid blowing in the wind and standing on top of a hill, is part of a 5-stamp series themed Valuable Nature. They cost 12 kroner or $1.4 each and are available as of January 14th. Thunberg, who just turned 18, rose to prominence for weekly solo protests outside Sweden's parliament in Stockholm in August 2018. And since then, she has been the inspiration for students around the world who followed her, and she was invited to speak to political and business leaders. She is now the young global face fighting for environment. Goodbye and take care.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.